Why is the action in the Matrix sequels so boring? I recently rewatched the Matrix trilogy and I started thinking about the action scenes, more specifically the fight scenes, and why my mind always starts wandering when they happen. They're all very complex, flashy fights that on paper sound like they should be very impressive. But even when I saw these movies the first time in theaters, I could feel something was off, and I wasn't anything close to the hypercritical and observant person I am today. I was just a kid who was excited to see a sequel to one of his favorite movies. Let's look at the original movie's fight scenes and talk about what makes them so great. The Matrix uses wires to let actors fly around in inhuman ways while they're fighting. It became really popular at the time, and you saw it in Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon, Charlie's Angels, X-Men. After The Matrix, it was everywhere. But like anything else in the world, there's a right way and a wrong way to do it. And what's right isn't always right in every context. A certain style of effect can look great in one movie and terrible in another, when movies have different tones, cinematography, budgets, and actors. The Matrix perfectly blended these wire techniques with sharply choreographed punches and kicks. So what went wrong in the sequels? Why does this fight with Agent Smith feel so intense and believable, while this one feels boring and fake? A small factor is that by the time The Matrix Reloaded came out, wire fu was played out. Audiences were over the initial impressiveness, and the slow motion effects that were so amazing when the first movie came out were being used in car commercials and parodied in Scary Movie. But a much more serious problem is a problem that some other stories have: the invincible protagonist. Characters without vulnerabilities are boring. If someone can't be hurt, if they're so good that they can't possibly fail, it's not fun to watch other people fight against them. Neo, in The Matrix Reloaded especially, is never in danger. When he fights Seraph, when he fights 100 Agent Smiths, when he fights the Merovingian's bodyguards, there's not a doubt in the audience's mind that he'll win. And not just win, but that he won't even be injured. And he knows it, it's right there on his face. He's entirely emotionless, just going through the motions of a choreographed fight. This is why the fight between Morpheus and the agent on top of the semi-truck ends up being the most exciting fight of the sequels. Morpheus is not Superman like Neo. In several moments, he is in danger of dying, and he very well could die in this fight because he's not the main character. He's fighting like his life depends on it, while Neo acts like he couldn't care less and this fight is just a minor inconvenience to him. That's not to say that movies can't have action scenes where the hero just bulldozes all over the bad guys in a fun ass-kicking sequence. The first Matrix ends with Neo becoming an all-powerful badass that effortlessly stops bullets. But it's exciting because this is the climax of his character journey. It's an earned moment because we've seen him transform and we're happy for him. One of my favorite action scenes of all time is in RoboCop when he barges into the cocaine factory and just shoots everyone. You never feel afraid for RoboCop's safety in this sequence, but the very important difference is that the movie has been leading up to this moment, as it follows several sequences that dive into RoboCop's memory and emotional trauma, and this scene feels like a satisfying release of tension for the character and the audience. As always, context matters. But you'll also notice that in RoboCop, everything has a gritty, realistic feel to it. Maybe RoboCop doesn't face any real challenge at this moment, but the realistic presentation of violence through squib work, the dust in the air and breaking glass, the dirty feel of the factory, it makes the scene feel real. So, having mentioned that, let's compare the look of the fight scenes in the Matrix sequels to the original. The sequels, especially in Reloaded, have fights that take place in very clean environments, characters dressed in gorgeous designer outfits in pristine condition. Rarely do we even see a drop of blood, and the camera is generally pulled back to clearly show all the choreography. That doesn't have to be a bad thing. I love being able to clearly see a fight. But unfortunately, the choreography in the fight scenes feels very fake when you frame it like this. It looks like a bunch of actors just taking turns, going through memorized attacks and guards. The hits don't feel impactful, it doesn't look like they're actually fighting, and the cinematography just makes it all the more obvious. Now look at this fight between Morpheus and an agent in the first film. We still have over-the-top fight choreography, but it has so much more impact. You feel the punches, you see the way the chaos affects the environment as things break and shoot dust into the air. Morpheus looks tired, he's bleeding, the fight is so much more believable. Neo versus Agent Smith is equally good. Automatically, the fight is more interesting because in the first movie, Neo isn't the invincible flying Superman he becomes later. In addition to all the tension the movie has built up between these two characters, they fight with all the determination they can muster. You can see the hate on Smith's face, and the bravery and frustration that Neo feels. It's a flashy kung fu style fight with reality-bending wire techniques, but it also feels like a street brawl between two guys that hate each other back behind a bar in the alley. Neo gets his ass kicked, he's coughing up blood back in the real world. It feels real. It also helps that when these characters get knocked around, they don't look like plastic people. That's one of the biggest problems with the 100 Agent Smiths fight. Neo's just knocking everyone around with punches and kicks that feel so weak and flimsy they wouldn't even knock a child down. And the movie seems to be aware of how goofy this all looks because they actually inserted comical bowling pin sound effects into the fight. It's a joke. The CG is at times really bad, we all know that. It was bad in 2003 and it's bad now. But we don't need to get into that. A much bigger problem is that Neo simply flies away. So why was he fighting in the first place? Did he expect to beat 100 Agent Smiths with Kung Fu? Of course not, he's not dumb. He should have just flown away at the beginning. The fact that he could have simply flown away at any moment further deflates the tension in this fight. A fight that really didn't feel like it needed to happen. That's another problem in these movies. The fights seem to exist solely because it's a Matrix movie and we need fights. I understood why the fights were happening in the first movie. The agents ambush our heroes at the meeting point and they don't have time to escape. They try to get out by using the inside of the walls, but an agent breaks through and grabs Neo. Morpheus is willing to die to protect Neo because he believes in him, so he breaks through the wall and attacks the agent. So on top of all the visceral, believable action, we have very strong character motivation driving it. While Matrix Reloaded's first 3 major fight scenes play out like this. Hey, I'm the Oracle's guardian. We need to have an awkward, emotionless fight scene where no one gets hurt just to prove that you're worthy. Hey Neo, it's Agent Smith, and I want to take over your body. Even though I'm really smart and I have access to hundreds of clones, and I could have come up with a smart plan to trap you or something, let's just have a big fight even though you could fly away at any moment. You guys take the Keymaker while I stay here and fight these dudes in a cheesy, bloodless action scene that I could probably just end with my mind in 5 seconds if I really wanted to, because I'm as powerful as Jesus. There's no feeling behind any of the action, and it's like they're throwing all these fight scenes at us because they think Matrix fans will get bored if we don't have a bunch of cool fight scenes. But that's so wrong! If you look at the original movie from 1999, it starts with a little action sequence of Trinity beating up on some cops and then running away, and then there isn't a single moment of action or fighting until 50 minutes into the movie. So we're almost an hour in without any real fight scenes. The movie kept our attention with intrigue, mystery, discovery, strong character development, and true moments of tension like the escape sequence in The Office, which has no action but ends up being far more intense than any of the extravagant action scenes in the sequels. And you know what? That fight scene at the 50-minute mark isn't even a real fight scene. It's a sparring session between Neo and Morpheus. The first actual fight scene between our heroes and the bad guys doesn't happen until an hour and 20 minutes. That's a long time to wait for an action scene in a movie that is considered a sci-fi action classic. But it doesn't feel that long because the movie is so good at holding your interest with its characters and world building. So when we finally get to that big release in the ambush action sequence, we are so ready for it, and the rest of the movie is non-stop awesome action. So that's my video on why the action in the Matrix sequels is boring. Looking at the trailer for the new movie, I see this problem being resolved. You can see it clearly in this scene where Neo stops the bullets. There's a huge difference between this and this. This looks like he has to put effort into what he's doing. He looks stressed, he looks concerned, he looks vulnerable. And that's exactly what we need in a hero. When heroes are perfect and invincible, they are uninteresting and boring. When they are flawed and vulnerable, they are easier to relate to and root for. Thank you for watching this video. I'm hoping that Matrix Resurrections is at least a fun time that doesn't mess anything up any more than it already is. See you later.